everybody. I'm back. Good to see everybody here. Julie Roginsky here, Michelle Kinney, Jeff Jarvis for Breaking the News, or whatever we're eventually going to call this show. Good to see you guys.
Julie,
welcome home.
Thank you.
Welcome home.
A little bit jet lagged, but I'm back.
From what I'm hearing before the show, Julie is not unpacking her bags and she's going back.
Oh my God. Let me just say this. Japan has opened my eyes to how this is absolutely the Asian century, and we are living a whole different timeline here in the States compared to what's going on over there. And it's just, if you have not been to Japan, for people who are watching and you have the opportunity to go, just go. It is just incredible. Before we get to the news here, or I should say the media news here, just some breaking news that it turns out that there is an American fighter jet that has been downed over Iran. Something CENTCOM denied yesterday, but has finally admitted today. The fate of the plane's crew is unclear. There is apparently a bounty that the Iranians have put on the heads of the downed airmen who are somewhere in Iran right now. And so I just want to stress that these are Americans who are following the orders that they were given by their commander-in-chief, and we hope that they are safe and that they are found. Their fate, as I said, is unclear, but if they are alive, I hope that the United States military gets to them before the Iranians do.
Because it brings back memories for those of us who are old enough of the Iranian hostage crisis. Yeah. And we could be there again.
Yes. And there are apparently Air Force planes flying low over Iran right now, trying to locate them. And so we truly hope that they are located and recovered safely. In the meantime, there is more infrastructure sites in the Persian Gulf that have come under attack. And it feels like we're at a war that is not being given really the due deference by this media that it should be. I don't know how you feel about this, but while I was gone, I just want to say, looking at newspapers, obviously I don't read either Korean, I was in Seoul for a little while, or Japanese. I was in Japan for most of my time that I was away, but I certainly can see pictures, and Donald Trump is on the front page of every newspaper in Asia. I saw we went for Korean barbecue the first night that we were in Seoul, and a waiter who barely spoke English said to us, "Please, no war, no war. Iran, no war." And so again, just sitting here thinking how our excursions is affecting them. They are about to run out of oil in Asia because the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz funds South Korea and Japanese oil more than anywhere else. So
it seems here to be an unseen war.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up with Vietnam. Certainly, the two Iraq incursions were very different, and partly because of the Iranian regime cutting off the internet means we don't see it. It's just as the Israeli regime cut off access in Gaza. We don't see the end result of war on TV for generations that are used to seeing that, and it's invisible to us. It struck me that even the phrase "the war in Iran" is strange because it's a war to Iran, but it's being fought intersecting over the skies, and we're not seeing the result in our media.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's right. While I was away, I certainly was reading the New York Times and other, just online. I have to say, strangely, I don't know how you feel. I think the Wall Street Journal has been doing an incredible job.
Yeah, I know. Funny enough, right?
Much more so than the Times. The Times I have had, I just want to, we just talk about the New York Times for a moment, because I woke up this morning, and maybe it's the jet lag, but I was enraged about what I read in the New York Times and have over the last couple of days. I don't understand what is going on here, other than this is a repeat of, remember the Man and Diner?
Oh, yeah.
Also, they kept running over and over and over again after Trump got elected in 2016. And now we all of a sudden have to find out what these people are thinking. And let's go talk to, somebody in a diner in Ohio and find out.
They wear khakis like we do.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's like going to the zoo and seeing what people outside New York feel, which is how the New York Times is treating, normal people. But now all of a sudden they are trying to figure out the manosphere in ways that are insane. And so like they had, I'm just going to tell you 2 opinion pieces today. And I just want to stress something. Gretchen Carlson and I, we run this nonprofit that is literally the nonprofit in the Me Too space, because sadly, not many more still exist. We cannot get an op-ed placed in the Times about the 2 Me Too laws that we passed to save our lives. Just the Times will not take them. Meanwhile, and have not taken them for years. Meanwhile, here is an op-ed by a woman named Claire Wilmot in the Times today that says the Epstein emails show Me Too never stood a chance. I'm not going to rehash everything she said, other than to say, you want to bet Me Too never stood a chance? I passed 2 fucking laws that are impacting people every single day in the Me Too space. So believe me, it stood a chance, and it continues to help people every single day. And I'm here as proof and evidence of that. The second op-ed is Gavin Newsom is no longer a deferential white male ally. And it's all about how, and I'm going to read the lead here because it's so infuriating. Not so long ago, the future was female. That expectation was most memorably expressed a few weeks before the presidential election in 2016, when Hillary Clinton posted a picture of her young self on Twitter with the caption, "Happy birthday to this future president." And then blah, blah, blah. Joe Biden agreed on the 2020 presidential campaign, described himself as a transition candidate who would serve as a bridge to a more diverse and feminine future. They keep going. But if the Democratic Party politics are any indication, the future is no longer female. And then they talk about how the vogue for white masculinity is apparent in the enthusiasm for Graham Plattner, a hard-bitten oysterman and a war vet who is seeking the Democratic nomination for Senate in Maine. It is evident in the rise of James Tallarico. It can even be seen in the makeover of Pete Buttigieg, who has acquired a beard, a splitting mall, and a taste for flannel shirts.
Head explodes.
Why are we pitting people against each other constantly?
Exactly.
It's not that
the country against each other.
Female or the future is male. 50% of the country is female. 50% of the country is male. We don't have to fight with each other. Why is the Times constantly denigrating women by basically saying that no, the Me Too movement is dead and the future is no longer female? Like, the future was never female. I hated that phrase always. The future is made by whoever it's going to be made by. As the mother of a son, I hope the future is helpful to him. And as a woman, I hope the future is helpful to me. Like, why is the Times constantly ginning this shit up? It's so, like, I saw this today and I just got so annoyed. And I continue to get annoyed because, as I said, they run shit like this, 2 op-eds in one day.
Unbelievable.
And meanwhile, I can show you 5 op-eds that we've submitted to the New York Times that would absolutely repudiate this. They will not run them. Will not run them. It is a decision that they make as to what they platform.
Michelle?
This stuff makes me so angry sometimes I can't speak. I had not seen these things until right before we came on air. Julie told me about them. And then Jeff had actually flagged another article in the New York Times, which we'll talk about here in a minute. The dismissal of women in general is always mind-boggling to me. But when it comes from women, I'm like, do you know how lucky you are to be here now in 2026 after everything that women have been through in this country's 250-year history? It wasn't long ago that we couldn't have bank accounts. We couldn't have credit cards. It wasn't until 1993 that all 50 states in this country said that husbands can't rape their wives. We can't even pass the ERA. It's the list goes on of things that would just honestly make people's heads explode if they really knew. And it's this like internalized misogyny that is coming from the right that they are somehow packaging and marketing. And it's not, it's the Handmaid's Tale of it all, of the Serena Waterford. I'm like, you do understand at the end of this, all your great ideas about this new world that you want to build, they will not put you in it. They will put you in a corner and cuff you like everybody else. And I don't understand how these people are not understanding it. But the New York Times, to platform this, to normalize it, to put us back. I mean, we're always taking, several steps forward, and then there's a backlash. There's a book called Backlash, which I hope everyone will read, that is about the women's rights movement in this country and how culture and politics and policy have always lashed back at women every time we make progress. Women got the right to vote. And then what was the beauty and fashion ideals for the next decade after that? It was like rail thin, drop waist, flappers. Like it was unattainable. And that's why they keep moving the goalpost for women every decade. But it's so infuriating. And if you're just joining us here for the first time, I started a women's organization as well called the Seneca Project. I'm no longer, I co-founded it with Tara Setmayer on the premise of, and in honor of Seneca Falls and the Seneca Falls, Women's Rights Convention, which was the first to ever exist, to ever happen in the history of the world. And, Tara and I were inspired by our, how do I say this? Experiences working for an organization that was led by men. And we said we didn't want to do that ever again, never, because we were tired of being put in the corner and being silenced and dismissed and not listened to and taken seriously. And, it makes me really angry. And do you mind if I play this ad that we made? Because I think it just kind of encapsulates all of this. Just some context, that we made this before Joe Biden dropped out of the race. Alex Borstein, who you may know from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and Family Guy, she does the voiceover for us. I'm going to play this right now.
In July 1848, courageous women came together in Seneca Falls, New York, to start a movement. They dared to fight against treatment as second-class citizens. After decades of struggle, women fought and won the right to vote, to work without discrimination, to control our bodies, to even open bank accounts without the permission of a man. Each one was a triumph against those who believed we didn't deserve them. Well, today, those hard-fought victories are under attack. Donald Trump and his allies are determined to send us back to a time when we had no say, no freedom, no choice.
I got rid of Roe v. Wade.
Do we want a future where our daughters have fewer rights than our grandmothers? Where their bodies are state property? Their voices silenced? Their opportunities erased? We say hell no. We won't go back. This November, we must take back what is ours. For ourselves, for our daughters, and for the pioneers of Seneca Falls. It's up to us.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? There has to be some form of punishment.
And there you have it.
And so, after having won the right to vote, the New York Times, not in the op-ed pages, not in the opinion pages, but in the news pages, has a story that I can't believe it was ever assigned, reported, written, run, and positioned this way. The women who believe that women should lose the right to vote, says the headline. Adherents to biblical patriarchy support household voting. One household, one vote. The husbands. Get this. They say the idea is catching on. That's what they're putting into the news pages. The Times, and it goes to what you said before, Julie. It's this desire they have to platform, to discover, have diner lunch with, and thus platform the extremists, not the people who are fighting and creating victories like you after Me Too, but instead these extremists. And it fits into their cliches, their tropes. The example you gave from the op-ed was they named 3 men, so 3 is enough for a trend. All they had to do was find 3 and there's a trend.
Yeah.
And 100's enough for a movement. This one ridiculous paragraph. The church Mr. Partridge founded in his house with a few people in 2021 now has more than 100 parishioners attending every Sunday. with 5 to 10 new families joining every year. Well, that's enough for a movement.
5 to
That's
10.
enough for a story in the
mean,
New York effing Times.
I have 100 people living in my more than 100 people living in my building.
Same.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. So this desire to constantly look at the extremes, and it's a cliche to say they're moving the Overton window, but that's exactly what happens here. That's what they do, is by trying to make it as if these people are worthy of our attention and coverage, and not just that they're getting the attention, but who is not. The fact that you can't get an op-ed in the New York Times about the success in the Me Too movement, about the impact it has had, is them ignoring it. The same way they treated No Kings. Jeremy Peters, right before the march, was already dismissing it as too hard. They go and they find an extremist in the crowd as if he's just some passersby. Didn't apparently Google him, because everybody who did Google him found out he's an extremist. The Times is irreparably broken.
This op-ed about how the Me Too movement never stood a chance, and it goes on and on and on and on, and it's by some researcher who did all this research, and it talks about how the Epstein women, they never stood a chance. Listen, let me say something. The reason that we're living in the Epstein moment, the reason that we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein, the reason that Jeffrey Epstein, the scandal, just brought down, it's bringing down Trump in ways that I think very few other issues are.
That's 5,000 cuts for sure.
Because people believe these women. And the reason they believe these women is because of what we did 10 years ago, where before some of us came forward about Roger Ailes or Harvey Weinstein or any of these other women.
Or Bill Cosby.
It was Bill Cosby. It was a he said, she said.
Yep.
He said, she said, he said, she said. Today, nobody's suggesting that, Jeffrey Epstein said he didn't do it, but all of these women said he did do it, so therefore we don't know who to believe. For the most part, the one thing that unites this country is that both Republicans and Democrats believe that Jeffrey Epstein was a predator and a pedophile. Mm-hmm. That would not have been the case, and it was not the case 15 years ago. 15 years ago, it would have been, well, one person says A and the other person says B, so we're not going to talk about it because we don't have any evidence. We don't have any proof. That's something the Times has never platformed. I know that because I've written that op-ed and I've submitted it to the Times in various different ways many times over the last decade.
Mm-hmm. Did they ever, oh, geez, it's not right for us now, or that kind of stuff. Did they ever say more?
Nope.
I would love to know what Michelle Goldberg is thinking this morning. I'd love to know what's going through her head, because I'm sure she can't,
She can say, listen, Michelle Goldberg, and here's the beauty of the New York Times. If you work for their if you are on their op-ed pages, you are hired by the publisher and you don't answer to anybody but the publisher. You are hired by Sulzberger. And that's all. And you can write whatever you want. And there's no editor to stop you. And yet this is what they choose to platform. So if Michelle Goldberg has a problem with it, Michelle Goldberg can absolutely write an op-ed or a column talking about it. And if she's
I think we saw a change in that eventually, where I'm suddenly blanking on his name. Shame on me. Pulitzer Prize winning economist who quit the Times because he was Paul Krugman, right? Who said that he was getting edited by the new regime in ways that he never had been before.
You're right. That's true. That used to be the case before. That you're absolutely right.
And even people who are, I know a few who are not staff writers, but who are contributing writers, and they're going through a lot of hell trying to get anything through the gauntlet these days. I constantly admire Jamel Bouie.
Oh my God, the best.
He speaks truth. He calls on history, but he also does it not just in the pages of the Times. The subtweeting, as we used to say, that occurs in Jamel Bouie's videos elsewhere, I think is very powerful. Where they're supposedly not supposed to criticize the Times, but he finds his ways to do it.
Yeah,
and that's how he survives within. I don't think I can point to anybody else who does it quite as well as he does.
He's so good.
Yeah, he's excellent. But these decisions that the Times is making, where they live in some sort of world that it's like the pre-2015 world where we have to be balanced. We have to, like, you're not an anthropological magazine. You don't have to go out there and find these weirdo 100-member
tribes.
churches.
Yeah, right.
Tribes, right. Like, you're not going to some place in the Galapagos and finding some weird turtle that doesn't exist anywhere else. But that's what they're basically doing. But it is, right, Jeff?
Yes.
Because 100 people have joined some wacko church. And the only reason this is getting so much attention now is because Pete Hegseth happens to be one of those people. And he's uplifting this crazy ass pastor. Michelle has done tons of ads about this guy.
Doug Wilson.
And because Pete Hegseth belongs to this weirdo church, it means that all of a sudden this is some crazy trend. Now, listen, while I was gone, I read a book called Opus about Opus Dei, which I strongly recommend. Michelle, I think you actually told me to read this book.
Yeah.
About Opus Dei and how Opus Dei has really seeped into our politics in ways that are crazy. And this book has gotten so much play that the Pope actually very publicly appeared with the author of this book.
We should have him on.
Yeah, in order to send a message to Opus Dei that I think he's coming for them. You want to focus on something, focus on that, New York Times. But they're not, right? They're not focusing on that. I don't know why they're not focusing on that. That's a real story. Because
not to mention like the human trafficking. I mean, there's so much going on there.
Much, like, that's a real story because those people are actually 100% infiltrated our government in ways that are just insane. Yeah. Not
they
this weirdo, church. Who cares about that?
They won't grapple with the meaning of religion right now. My sister is a retired Presbyterian minister, a good Scotch drinking minister, I might quickly add. I, however, was the bad child and left long ago. And I when she was a minister in Princeton, and I remember having a conversation with her and her colleagues saying that the main so-called mainline church, abandoned the pulpit of television. You abandon it to the crazies. And they abandoned the pulpit of media to the crazies. And so today, when you see mentions of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, it is constantly the expression of still here, the extremes. And that becomes synonymous then with religion. Now, I blame the mainliners for this to great measure for not repudiating sufficiently, it happens, but not sufficiently that which goes on the extremes. But the influence of religion in total in this country is extreme, and it's not properly covered because it's scary. It's like being at a cocktail party and you don't want to bring it up.
Yeah. Am I imagining this? Did Jamel Bowie do something about this? Am I imagining? I don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. But talking about how like we don't talk enough about Christian extremism, and it's like how it is a problem. And this is, when I was at LP too, we made an ad called The American Taliban, because once you start looking at these people through that extremist lens, only then do I feel, at least, American people can actually understand what is happening. The radicalization, the means in which they're being radicalized, the violence, the cult-like behavior, what's the first thing to go usually in these authoritarian or like extremist movements? Women's rights, gay rights. I mean, all that stuff goes first. And they've been signaling that for decades now. So, unfortunately, it was inevitable.
And the Christianity is a veil, right, for racism, for sexism, for extremism. All you have to do is pop the label on it, and then it's untouchable.
Well, you're absolutely right, because, why does Scientology fight so hard to be designated as a religion? Because then you can't touch it.
And tax breaks.
And tax breaks too, but you can't touch it, right? Because now all of a sudden you're going after religion.
You're a bigot. You're not tolerant of my religion. I'm like, okay.
But
you're fake Navy.
As much as we're sitting here constantly talking about and maligning the Taliban, and we're constantly maligning, Islamofascism, whatever the hell people call it, right? Yeah. Let's be very clear. The New York Times just platformed a story about a church that wants to take away the right to vote for women, put them back into some pre-19th Amendment world, and not just from a voting perspective, but from a, how many stories has the Times done on the trad wife thing, right? It's nonstop. Well, friends, you can call it whatever the hell you want. You could put Jesus, you could put Jesus on it and put whatever label you want. This is about oppressing women.
Oh my God. Yes. 1,000%.
And how is that any different? There's this article that Jeff, you just alluded to, talks about some woman wears a veil or a scarf over her head because it reminds her to be humble, whatever the hell it is. How is that any different from women being veiled in the Muslim world?
No different. It's
absolutely. And yet we look at them and we pity them and we think, oh my God, look at how in the Stone Age they are. Well, why is it when you put Jesus on, next to it, it's okay, but when you
then why are you all drinking raw milk? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, I can't. It's so ridiculous and over the top.
In science and medicine,
right? And it's
enlightenment,
unmoved by facts,
and knowledge. So when I came up through the field and the 50 years I've devoted to a field I now regret of journalism, one of the tropes. We have a lot of them in journalism. We write the first draft of history, just the facts, all that stuff, right? If your mother tells you to double check it, all that kind of crap that we release. The greatest one of all is this idea that we have a magical power called news judgment, that we know what a story is. And believe me, in journalism schools, I hear it constantly. It's the kids don't really understand what a story is. That's the hardest thing to teach them, is to understand what a story is, as if this is the judgment. The judgment, that is just gatekeeping. That is just an expression of power. And the problem oftentimes that I've seen in newsrooms and in journalism schools is that a young journalist of color will come with a story idea and be told, oh, that's not big enough. Which is to say, it doesn't serve the editor's interests as a white man, right? And so that's the scale that is often put to stories, is it has to speak to enough people. It has to be big enough. It has to be of broad interest. How the hell does this 100-member church pass that test of so-called news judgment? It is an effort to reach out and bring up to public attention, not in a sufficiently critical way, an extreme edge cult. And it isn't journalism. It's just not what journalism is supposed to be.
And they're also failing to connect the dots like they are with everything else. I mean, in particular with women's rights, right? And there's these, big lofty women's rights, people's brains kind of like shut off and your eyes glaze over. Okay, yeah, whatever. We already did that. No, we didn't. And it's much more sinister, and it's much more connected to this other, fascist movement that is happening in this country, in this authoritarian takeover. For instance, the EEOC sued Coca-Cola Beverages in February of this year for hosting a women's-only networking event, alleging sex discrimination against male employees. Because they're saying that men are being discriminated against for having a women's networking event in this major company that I am certain has more men in it than women.
Can I just say this? Because I just noticed the date. It's April 3rd. 9 years ago today, I sued Fox News.
Oh my gosh.
And I sued Rod Drales for sexual harassment and retaliation. And I'm only bringing this up to say this. I unfortunately have to be limited as to what I can say, so I'm going to speak in much broader strokes here. Sexual harassment is not about sex. It is about power. And it is about having power over somebody. And yet, it is typically men having power over women.
Yep.
And it's not particularly sexual, in that hypothetically, I don't know that some men would have even been capable of wanting to, of doing things to women that they potentially wanted to do. And yet it is about power, and it is about domination. And I'm not saying it is about power and domination sexually, because that's different than sexual assault. It is about having power and domination over women professionally and in other ways. And so I say that purely to say that it is very hard to be a woman in the corporate world.
Hell yeah.
And, I have stood up twice in my life, once at Fox and once against your former governor, Phil Murphy, Jeff, when I saw the people and his team being really awful to young women, not to me, but to young women. And in both those cases, it became very gendered as to what the response was, right? Like very, very gendered in them coming after you based on, oh, she's saying this because she must, it's constantly gendered. And I think what the problem here is that the Times refuses to acknowledge, because they're trying to figure out this podcasting space now, and they're seeing these podcasting bros, and they're seeing this like what's going on here, and why is somebody like a Hassan Piker getting 30,000 clicks on his stuff, and why is Joe Rogan number one? And it's all these men, and what they're trying on both sides, right? What they're trying to do is they're trying to appeal to these men, and we have to bring in young men because that's the audience that we're obviously missing. Like, what you're doing is you're elevating the worst elements of these men. Because as the mother of a young man, I can tell you that that's not the kind of young man that I'm raising who would be into that kind of stuff. But yet you're elevating this incel, like, we hate women, we don't understand women, we don't understand why don't women want to sleep with us? Why don't women want to date us? Like,
gee, I wonder why.
No, it's worse than that. No, I have a right to sex with women.
Yeah.
It's the incel.
I'm entitled to it. Right.
It's entitlement. Exactly. And I'm angry that they don't give me what I want.
But it's a short walk from what you just said to let's platform these people and try to figure out how to enfranchise their audience. Like, why are we trying to coddle an audience of young men and validate those feelings as opposed to having honest discussions with them and saying, hey guys,
right,
the reason that you're not getting laid because you don't know how to speak to women.
Yeah, because you're awful. You're not nice.
Because you don't have a future because you left education.
Yeah, like
yes, you don't read books.
And you sit around and you feel sorry for yourselves as opposed to doing something about it.
Yep.
But that's it is a short walk from what we just said to what the Times is platforming today. The Me Too movement is dead, and Pete Buttigieg is trying to be a man because he's now growing a beard. Well, fuck, I don't want growing a beard.
Again, identifying what they seem to like, what they seem to be masculine and not masculine. Like, again, it's this premise that these young men are not, quote unquote, succeeding in the same way that, they used to be masters of the universe, and they were the only ones that made money, and they were the only ones that were sitting on, on boards and of major companies. And they're like, well, when you look around and you see other people of color or women, and there's not enough seats for you anymore, it's not your fault because you can't compete with them. It's their fault. And you should hate them, and you should do everything you can to put them down and put them back where they belong. And that's really like what is such a huge part of it. I mean, there's data now showing that women under the age of 35, there's like this huge amount of women who don't have children, who don't want children, who don't want to get married. I'm like, who would sign up for this shit at this point? Like I say to my husband all the time, who I love, who's a great person. And I'm like, if I was a young woman right now dating, I'd be like, nope, get me out of here. And I hear nightmare stories from my single friends all the time.
This is also, I have a theory of the Reformation theory of the internet, that it was people who looked like me, old white men, who controlled media and politics and education and name the institution. The internet comes along, and the one thing it does do is it breaks open that hegemony of voice. And it gave, people had voices, they just weren't heard. It gave a spot on the stage to people of color and to women and to people, communities who were not heard of. And that's what scares the shit out of the powers that were. And that's what leads. So to my mind, Me Too and Black Lives Matter are the Reformation.
Yeah.
January 6th was the Counter-Reformation.
Yep. It was the backlash.
And it's exactly, and it's the fight that's going on. And media's role in this is to justify that Counter-Reformation because it thinks that it's defending old institutions. You know, and the great irony here to me, I wrote about this in the Gutenberg parenthesis, out in paperback now, is that the conservatives of old definition would defend institutions. Progressives would want to change those institutions. We now see a reversal where the so-called right wants to tear down every institution because they realize they're losing them. They realize they will lose power over them, so they will burn the fields so that the crops cannot be used by those who follow. And so we progressives find ourselves in the odd position of defending institutions against those attacks. But the proper defense of those institutions is to get them to change. And that is why we criticize the New York effing Times, because it's not changing and it's not understanding the attack it is under and how it is being used by these forces.
And it's like the Donald Trump magical thinking, right? If I just say that it's going to go away, it's going to go away. It's just magically going to go away. Right. And if we take down that exhibit and we take, this thing out of that museum,
it doesn't
exist anymore. It never happened. Well, I'm sorry to tell you it did. And it is happening. And you have all lost the culture war. You lost. They lost. And they
But not if you read the Times, it doesn't look like they have.
Right.
Yes, I agree, Michelle. They have.
Right. They have to create another reality, that I don't know who's living in. I'm certainly not, but it's listen, I said this the other day on one of the lives that I did by myself, talking about, I don't know what, but at the end I said, oh, you know what? It was after Trump's speech. I was on with Jacqueline, and we were talking about this. And I said, the podcast space is overwhelmingly dominated by men. There are not enough people who are women in this space who are given the same amount of opportunity, investment, clicks, what have you. And that is just another reason why, we found it so important to do this as women, led by women, founded by women, owned by women, because we're like, we have to hold down the fort here. And people have said to us, well, listen, no one's going to give you money if you don't have a man. Someone said that to us. And I said, okay, screw you. Bye.
Oh.
Yeah. So,
yeah. It's really fascinating how the Times, and I don't mean to turn this into just an entire New York Times bashing session, although it is very cathartic.
Yeah, why not? It's Friday.
But it's very fascinating to me, to your point, Jeff, how the Times just thinks they're going to continue, like nothing's changed, right? We're still going to continue to do the same stuff that we've done for the last 100 years. And then we're going to nod to the changing times by doing these anthropological little forays into the right wing without ever platforming what is really going on.
Right.
And what is really going on in the country is not this weirdo shit with 100-member church that wants to take women back to the Stone Age. What is really going on in the country is that there is a movement that is bipartisan in nature that believes female survivors over a pedophile predator who is now dead, who enfranchised a tremendous number of people who are still living, that the Times would be better spent trying to figure out who the hell they are, who these people are, right? Because while Jeffrey Epstein is dead, he didn't rape all these women by himself. He trafficked them to somebody, and we still don't know exactly who those somebodies are. So why in the world, instead of covering this stupid 100-member church, are we not dedicating at the New York Times all of our efforts to figuring out who these men are and holding them accountable? Because I will tell you, there's over 1,000 survivors out there. They know who they were trafficked to. Why don't you put some reporters on that and ask them that question?
Well, and also like also why, again, not connecting the dots to why this is so normalized, why this happened for so long, why. And it's not just rich and famous people. Look no further than the woman in France whose name, shame on me, I don't remember right now, was drugged and raped by her husband for
Giselle Bellico.
years.
Yeah.
There, thank you. She was drugged and then raped. Her husband would have other men come into their house and rape her. She didn't know that this was happening until later on. And, you know, this is something her husband did. And there was a reporter who went, I believe, gosh, who was, I'm blanking on everyone's name today, but there was a reporter who went and found a channel on WhatsApp with 35,000 men on it, trading secrets and tips on how to drug women and rape them and traffic them. It was a how-to with 35,000 men on it, just like nothing. This is normal in corners of the planet. And shame on the people who are supposed to be the truth tellers here for not connecting the dots.
Yep.
And again, looking back historically as to why this is happening and why we can't get over this. Why can't we move forward in this country, especially? It's sickening. But speaking of losers, also, there's a lot of, well, Elon Musk, right? The tech bro world, right? They see no value with women. Peter Thiel has already pretty much said this because, you know, he's a gay tech bro and he doesn't need women except for, you know, please go home and reproduce. And Elon Musk is like, yes, please have all of my babies because I would like 50 babies. And I bring this up because I wanted to talk briefly about Star Trek and how the newest Star Trek was canceled. And this was brought to my attention because a friend of mine wrote for the show and wrote the first openly gay character on Star Trek ever. And, you know, a lot of different reasons can be given for this. Star Trek's Starfleet Academy. Now, I don't know Star Trek. That's not my world. I don't really understand it. But the series was canceled following culture war backlash because they said it was too woke, quote unquote. And let me get to the part here. Okay, here's one of the people who had something to say about this. For example, Stephen Miller, the ghoulish White House advisor overseeing the Trump administration's immigration policies, posted an impressively stupid take on Twitter about Starfleet Academy, implying the series had become overly progressive. William Shatner poked fun at him in response, and the idea that Star Trek is now suddenly too woke, even though it has always been boundary pushing, is one of those opinions that only seems possible if you're a right-wing grifter more familiar with the show through cultural osmosis rather than, you know, actually watching it. Stephen Miller, this was back in January, complaining about it. And what does, you know, where is Star Trek? Paramount, CBS. So here it is, you know, talking about viewership. Was it in the top 10? No. But I think it had something close to like an 80%, you know, critic rating with the critics. I know the viewer stuff was lower, probably because of all these right-wing crazies. But, you know, do they know definitively that this is why it was canceled? No, but they're pretty sure. I mean, it's pretty suspect that, again, these people like Stephen Miller, these losers, these ghoulish losers, and Star Trek is great. Don't get me wrong. I don't know how these people have watched it their whole lives and like not gotten the point out of it, like how progressive and, you know, the first interracial kiss on television was on Star Trek. I mean, William Shatner, you know, brings that up as well. But, you know, Stephen Miller, I'm sure, called up the Ellisons and was like, cancel this shit.
Did he even have to call them up?
Right. But maybe he didn't. Maybe it was just out there and he's like, yeah, get rid of this.
Well,
they're looking for targets.
Yeah. I mean, look what's happening at 60 Minutes right now, where there's apparently going to be a purge this summer. Barry Weiss is furious as Sharon Alfonsi for, I don't know, being a journalist.
Right.
And Tanya Simon, who's the executive editor, you know, they're not sure what the status of executive producer, excuse me, what her status is, even though, you know, they may want to bring somebody from outside the show for the first time in the show's history to be in charge. They're going to take, I know we disagree on 60 Minutes, but I think it still plays an incredibly valuable role, and they're going to just bastardize it. And that's before they get to CNN, And you kind of already see at CNN what's happening, right? They're already starting to kind of move towards the Barry Weiss mentality. Everybody's auditioning for CBS. Everybody's already auditioning to get in with Barry Weiss. That's the end. I mean, we're going to be left with MS Now, and that's it. This is over.
MS Now is going to have Scott Galloway on it if they buy Vox, which is going to make me want to throw up every morning he's on Morning Joe. I want to go back to what you said. Speaking of manosphere crap, what you said, Michelle, though, is I think what this is making me think, and you've been pushing us this way for this discussion in the show, is not just news but culture. It's easy to change news. You fire a few people, you put a few people in, it's done every day, you can change it. It takes a little longer, not much longer, but it takes a little longer to shift cultural production. But we're going to see that happen. Think of the shows that were made that would never be made now. The shows that led to gay marriage by humanizing people. The shows that were smart and had subversive views. I don't think Sopranos would be made now. I don't think Breaking Bad would be made now. I think we can go through all of the things. Or also think about the crap that will be made.
Yeah.
The hallmarkization.
Yeah, just the sanitized version of reality.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that's that's their wishful, nostalgic, trad wife, so-called conservative view.
Leave it to Beaver of it,
Exactly.
Which I don't even know.
Why can't we go back?
Right. And you were talking about, shows that led to gay marriage. And I was thinking when Will and Grace obviously was such a huge show when I was in high school and college. And I remember being a freshman in college and going to see Matthew Shepard's mother speak. People don't know who that is. Her son was murdered in Laramie. It's terrible. He was, beaten to death essentially because he was gay. And there was somebody who would ask a question. Do you watch Will and Grace? Do you love Will and Grace? She's like, oh, I love it. She's like, what a wonderful show, like normalizing. She goes, but when are they going to give Will a boyfriend? When are they going to give Will a boyfriend? And I remember that was in probably 2000, 2001, around then. But look how far we've come. We've got Heated Rivalries, one of the biggest shows, in the world right now. So, again, the culture war, they have lost. They have lost it.
But they'll maintain power over the aging cultural institutions, the corporations. Maybe not institutions, but corporations. Those corporations are less and less important, but they'll have a role there. And I also blame Hollywood itself, because where has the call been to make the shows that lead to these kinds of progressive changes in society? I don't think we see it anymore.
The Pit.
Well,
yeah, the pit. God bless. Yes, that's one example. Yes,
with ICE and with school, with mass shootings, all kinds of stuff, and even just like tackling the American healthcare system.
Yep.
But I'll tell you this. You still go, and I just say this because I just came back from being abroad. But you go anywhere in the world, and what do you see? You still see people wearing Yankee hats. You still see people wearing American cultural institution. I mean, honestly, when I was in both in South Korea and in Japan, you go into any store and you have Dodgers hat. I mean, because of Ohtani, obviously, but you have Yankee hats. Not just because of Ohtani. I mean, like, baseball is still a big deal. American, you see Knicks jerseys, things that are just things that you don't see here. You don't see whatever the Japanese league is, jerseys here or all over the world, right?
I couldn't tell you any of the teams.
Right. We still are the dominant cultural force in the world. And what scares the shit out of me is that you have that dominant cultural force being taken over by the right, and it's going to succeed Trump, because Silicon Valley has gone completely MAGA. You've got, and those guys are more comfortable with MAGA. It's not that they're doing it because Trump is telling them to do it. I think Mark Zuckerberg and
found their true soul. Yes.
Yeah, like left to their own
Third Reich, right? That's what
right. And now you've got the Ellisons taking over HBO, and you've got the Ellisons taking over Warner Brothers, and you've got the Ellisons taking over Paramount. And that's going to succeed Trump. I mean, even if the next Democratic president wins, it's going to succeed Trump. The only thing I can say and I can't believe I'm saying this, but this is where I've gotten to in my life, is I hope the next president does to them what Donald Trump is doing.
God, yes. Please.
Which is, I don't want to hear bullshit about how, no, we're going to stay out in first. No, you tell them what to program. Like, you tell them what to program. I understand that it's not great. This is not what this country is based on, but like, we've got to have direction here.
These people will never learn.
I second the will for retribution, but I think that those companies will matter less and less. Though you raise a really important point about the international. So when I started the magazine Entertainment Weekly, I had a weekly column in my magazine. The last column that I wrote that did not run because it was stopped by the editors of Time Inc. was praising Canada's law for local content. That, sure, living next to the behemoth that is America, it makes sense that Canada should try to encourage and support local culture. Are you crazy? Don't you know what the business of Warner Brothers is? The editors of Time Inc. yelled at me. It didn't run. That was the last time I tried to write a column, and soon thereafter I walked out on a Friday. Wow. And so the business of these companies is the export of the hegemony of American culture. And what a future progressive regime could do is to find the ways to support a pluralistic culture and to diminish the power of those old companies as much as possible, whether that's through tax breaks and investments and attention and education and all kinds of ways to replace mass media.
Yes. What worries me, though, is, who's going to create the next Top Gun? Who's, if not Hollywood, right? Like, if they matter less and less, who has the budget to replace that? Because
that's true.
I mean, that's a bigger problem. Just, I think, even with Hollywood right now, is the franchisement of everything is just kind of watered down, even just the quality of and bravery of trying to tell good stories. And I mean, again, they're getting outstoried by production companies outside the country. And another thing with the Star Trek thing is, one of the things my friend said to me is, they said with all the back and forth with Canada, they think that there was, retribution there as well, because they do production in Canada, and they said no more. And that could have been part of it too. And listen, I don't know what role Google will play in this, because they seem to be, YouTube seems to be a place where people there's at least some semblance of democracy over here. But Phil Rosenthal, I understand this is just a food show, but it's a cultural food show with Phil Rosenthal. Somebody Feed Phil been on Netflix for several seasons, which is not political, but you kind of know where he stands just based on his worldview. That's moving over to YouTube in 2027. So, what's the future here for shows like that?
Yes, but again, I keep saying, like, YouTube is great for people like us, right? But if you want to export culture to the rest of the world, you need a multi-million-dollar budget in order to do that. And I mentioned Top Gun because it's such a jingoistic, I was never into it, but I know other people are. I was never, it's not my cup of tea, but that, Star Wars, Top Gun, all of these things. And I think about like shows, even listen, I was on the plane, I was watching The Godfather, and I was watching Godfather 1 and 2. The less said about 3, the better. But those are the kinds of movies that we just don't make anymore. Right? Those movies in the 70s that used to be really incredible, that made you think, we don't make anymore. Shows like The Sopranos, we don't make anymore. Shows like Mad Men, we don't make anymore.
Which, again, if that show now, I mean, my parents are rewatching it, I think, for like the 4th or 5th time right now. And my dad was saying, he's like, I'm just blown away by the story of the women in the show. I guess I've never seen it this way before. And I said, well, yeah, Mad Men's a story about women. It's not about the men.
I just listened to the book Last Kings of Hollywood, which is about Coppola and Spielberg and senior moment Star Wars.
George Lucas, yeah.
Thank you, George Lucas, right? And in a sense, they were amazing creators, but they also set something in motion in the franchise that has been the ruin of Hollywood, I think. that only if you have a franchise that is guaranteed to succeed, that's what we're going to invest in. And we're not going to take investments in brave, bold, new statements.
Right.
And I don't blame them for it, but their success is what led us to this business model now.
That's why the studio is such a good show too right now. They kind of grapple with that, art and commerce,
Yeah, but to your point, Jeff, I think maybe, but I also will say this. I don't know that The Godfather and They Made It was designed to be what it turned out to be, right? I think it was a risk. I think
it was a potboiler, pulpy book.
Right. The book
that he turned into something. Yeah.
Yeah. And Star Wars too. I mean, Star Wars on the face of it is a stupid low budget,
so good.
It is, but my point is, think about the pitch for Star Wars, right?
Oh, I know. I mean, like the remastering of the original was much better.
Yeah. But think about, not even visually, but think about the pitch for Star Wars. Like, we're going to make a movie about people living on other planets with robots and some guy breathing through a face mask. Like, it's kind of that's going to be an allegory for the Cold War or / potentially World War II. Like, who knows? And even The Sopranos, like, you think about The Sopranos, which I think is still to this day the best show, or Seinfeld, or any of these shows that were really, really, or All in the Family, all of these shows that were really culturally so significant. We don't have that anymore. Like, I don't know. I think Friends in some ways was probably the ruin of Hollywood, because it was like, that was like let's do a show about 4 or 6 people living together and being young together. And then you have all
realistically large apartment village.
Right. But I don't even know what shows are on TV right now, but that are really
That's the point. We don't know what shows are on TV right now because they don't matter.
I mean,
Abbott Elementary is probably the best one going.
The one that's on like a major network for sure.
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, because I'm thinking like, what have I been watching? Paradise, which is like so good. The Pit. Shrinking,
Drops of God.
I haven't watched
that one.
Never heard of that. What's that?
That's a weird. It's a French, Japanese, English language show about wine from manga, inspired by manga. It's out of nowhere. Loved it.
Okay.
2 seasons.
But again, that's a foreign show.
Yeah.
And
yes.
The show that you're talking about, Michelle, that everybody's watching, is Canadian.
Oh, Heated Rivalry. Well, that's the thing.
Yes.
And a lot of writers and creators and stuff have talked about how they're like, listen, they went to the major studios, and they won't say which one it was, but basically was like, okay, you can't have anybody kiss until the 4th episode and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, no. Jacob Tierney was like, I'm going to go make the show I want to. I'm like, very little money. I'm going to go to Canada. We're going to find somebody to help us there. And they did it with little money. They took no-name people, plucked them from obscurity, and wrote this, from a book series, took this great story, and that has taken the world by storm. And the studios are getting outstoried because they're so reliant on these franchises. It's lazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's lazy.
Yeah, I would say White Lotus is probably the one major show that's still kind of, Mike White's allowed to do what he wants to do.
Mike White.
But it's kind of insane. And I guess the reason I bring this up is because we do still have so much outsized cultural influence as Americans everywhere in the world. And that's disappearing. And that's really, guys, that's the last thing we got going.
Yeah, it is.
We got that in our military. And our military is doing all sorts of shitty shit. And so shitty shit, that's quite an expression. But and our soft power is disappearing. Mm-hmm. And it's our soft power that has been in the post-World War era the thing that has made us so powerful.
Look at the presence of Korean culture on the Oscars, which I celebrate. That's a global pluralism, and it's about time. But we've got to recognize that we ain't in charge of the world anymore.
No, and I'll tell you, somebody who's just in Korea, they kept asking me, like, when do you come? So I went to go see a dermatologist there because everybody wants to see.
So obsessed.
Everybody wants to have like good Korean skin. And the dermatologist was like, so you'll be back in like 6 months or a year, right? For like touch-ups. And I was like, I wasn't planning on it. And they were looking at me like,
this economy, I don't know.
But they were looking at me, these Americans, they're like, but that's what Americans do. You guys come here every 6 months to a year to and I was like, wow. Because I guess we can't get in this country medically what they give over there, which I mean, you tell me, but it's really fascinating that there is a whole tourism and by sheer coincidence, one of my friends texted me and said, oh my God, you're in Korea. I'm going to be there on Friday. A whole bunch of my girlfriends and I are going over there to get some beauty treatments. And I was like, really? People are actually flying?
I didn't know.
Yes. But that's what I'm saying. Like, culture has shifted so much. I don't know anything about K-pop. My son does. He knew all about all these different, I was like, wow. And meanwhile, you go there, and we went to the DMZ and we went to go look at, obviously, it's actually really kind of cool. You could look into North Korea, which is just fascinating. I mean, Seoul's only 30 miles from the North Korean border. And you think about Seoul as this incredible.
You go on the subway in Seoul and there's vending machines for gas masks.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so great.
Yeah. No, they're fully expecting to have the North Koreans overrun them any moment. But the point is, like, what's interesting is they are grateful to the United States, and they are, but for something that we did 80 years ago, right? Like, culturally, except for the Yankees hats, we don't have much to offer them anymore.
Well, one more note. I can't. We're about out of time. I want to make one more note that just amazes me. So right after No Kings, we have our No Kings protest. It doesn't get nearly as much attention as it should in media. But then what does our Congress do? It invites a king to come talk.
I cannot. And Donald Trump said in the East Wing on, I believe it was Tuesday, said, king's king. They say I'm a king. Well, if I was a king, I could get a lot. I mean, it's obviously getting to him, but he brought it up because he wants to be one. He's not that funny, you know?
But I will say this. It's fascinating, Jeff, how much the British are manipulating Trump with King Charles, right? Like they get exactly.
Well, what else is he good for?
I know, really, honestly.
But as much as, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we stayed in NATO because Charles asks Trump to stay in NATO.
Oh my gosh.
Which would be God's
I had
will.
not even considered that.
Yeah. No, listen, Charles is a humongous asset that the Europeans have.
Yeah.
Especially that the Europeans have, because he clearly is the one person who Donald Trump just worships because he does.
Yeah. Huge environmentalist too.
Yeah. And the fact, like, I think actually it's to the good, because if he can he's obviously going to do whatever the British government asks him to do. It's obvious that the Prime Minister of Britain has lost complete faith with Trump. But the beauty of this is that the person who's going to do what the government wants him to do is going to be the king. So I'm all for it.
Maybe if he could also send his brother to testify.
Send his brother back to be interviewed by the feds. I mean, listen, I'm not I couldn't care less about the monarchy. They're good for gossip, but that's about it. But as a diplomatic force, I think with this president, he actually has value added. So
all right, you made me see the light.
He said again the other day, people who say they like me, I like them, or people who are nice to me, I like them more. I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to say it, but I do.
But what they did, listen, what the Brits did with him was brilliant. They invited him for a state visit. That was obviously very important to him because he's all about the bullshit.
Right.
They had a whole thing. They let him stay at Windsor Castle. He was the first, the first or the second or whatever president to stay at Windsor
given
Castle.
Awards by not having to do anything.
Yeah. I mean, like, they had a state dinner for him. They brought Kate Middleton out. They sat her next to Trump. Trump hit on her.
God.
Like all this shit, they treat him like a child. They treat him like an infant, and it works. And if they can get him, if the king can say to him, hey, Mr. President, I think NATO is a really positive thing, and maybe you can find your way to stay, not pulling the United States out. Like, great. Have him go speak to Congress. Like, whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. it doesn't matter, because as long as they can manipulate him to do their bidding, it's all to the good.
That's where we are.
Yeah.
That's where we are.
Well, and speaking, I mean, the last thing that I really wanted to show people, because I don't know if people have seen this, is like, talk about mass media and propaganda and foreign governments trying to manipulate the Iranians. And I just want to be very clear that I am in no way saying that I like Iran or the regime or that I support it in any way. But they have got the Trump administration's number when it comes to trolling. They understand how to get to them. They understand how they communicate, and they are meeting them where they are, probably better than the Democrats are, which is saying something. So this was, I grabbed this from Under the Desk News. V had posted this morning, so they do the intro here, but the rest of it is a Pete Hegseth specific AI generated Lego meme that the Iranians put out, and oh my God.
Ron just dropped a new propaganda video. This one's about Pete Hegseth.
Yo, Pete Hegseth. This one's specially for you. You punk-ass rapist, bitch. Straight from Iran. Your tattoo covered clown with that cafe ink on your arm. Think you a crusader? Nah, just a drunk infidel in a fake uniform. Chain to kill all Muslims. Wasted in the hotel lobby. Sexual assault settlement in Monterey. Blocked the door, took a phone, paid her off quiet, cause Me Too was on. Now you secretary? What a joke, bro. Cheated on wives, multiple affairs. Kids in the mix, family man? Hell no. Handsy with women at Fox, drunk on the job. Your own team say, yo, this dude toxic. Couldn't even guard Biden's inauguration. Your own military said next. Book called American Crusade, dreaming holy war. But reality check. You just a failed vet, turned TV clown, slipping on your own mess. Trump picked you cause you kissed the ring. But wait, funny part ain't coming. The dude you sucking up to for that secretary gig. Trump himself was Bill Clinton's top cocksucker, giving blue jobs back in the day. Real talk, you out here blowing for access, but he the original BJ queen. You thought our missiles max 2,000 kilometers? Cute, rookie mistake. We hitting the bow, worshiping Epstein Island crew, the ones who hurt the kids. Revenge for every American soul you and Trump's dirty crew oppressed and did. We taking payback for the girls you broke, the wives you broke, the Muslims you hate. Every victim screaming in the dark. Iran got you on the play. You threw everything at us, all your cards, all your might. We still operating on 10% power, laughing while you fight. We see everything, know every secret, every dirty Epstein link you hide. Where you least expected, in the shadows we ride, and no place to slide. This ain't full force, just a warm up, Persian flow with the rap. Pete, you done roasted raw. Iran sending this heat, feel the math. Drop the mic, infidel clown.
There you have
Speaking
it.
of culture.
Well, I'll tell you something. They do a better job than Democrats.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's really good.
It is.
Really, I was like, listen, it's not bad.
Props.
Yeah. And they get how to do it. And they get how to do it. And I think that's something the Democratic Party obviously lacks.
Yep. They're not very good at trolling.
No.
No.
And that's a good troll. I mean, that's not like I don't like what Gavin Newsom's doing.
And goes, whoop.
Yeah, I don't like what Gavin Newsom's doing with the trolls, with the whole like trying to like out Trump on Twitter. It's kind of stupid, to be honest.
For a while, it was okay.
I think it was
but
funny
then
at first.
Yeah, it's gone overboard. That's good. That's good.
It was really good.
Yeah.
And also the thing that the part that said we see all of the Epstein stuff, like basically implying that we see it and we know and we've got the information. Oh. And whether they do or not, who knows? I'm sure they do, but again, highlighting every failure of Pete Hegseth's life in a Lego video is fantastic.
Take that, you dickless wonder.
All right, you guys. It's so good to be back with all of you. Good
yes,
to
Julie.
Good to have you back.
Glad you're here.
I'm back. All right. Michelle, I will see you tomorrow. We have a Americans podcast that we just dropped, the third one. People should watch that.
Please.
We are recording the 4th one this coming week, so that will be dropping also. And the Dems need a Michelle. They do. We do. The Dems.
There's a whole bunch of me. They're all over the place. They just need to pay them. Pay them and invest in these people.
Exactly. And then on that note, we'll see everybody again next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.